Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to face hours of intense questioning by MPs in Parliament today. Now, the Privileges Committee is investigating whether Johnson misled Parliament over the COVID-19 lockdown parties in a scam famously called Partygate. Ahead of the questioning, perhaps the biggest blow to Johnson comes from Cabinet Secretary Simon Case. Case denies giving Johnson any reassurance that COVID rules and guidance were followed at all times in number 10 during the Partygate scandal. Now, yesterday, the UK Parliamentary Committee published the Partygate evidence submitted by former Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the so-called 52-page defence dossier. Now released, Johnson has said that he takes full responsibility for everything that took place on his watch. The highlight of the documents is Johnson accepting that he misled the Parliament, but insisting he had no intention to do so. He says the statements to parliamentarians were made in good faith. Now, if the committee finds out today that the former leader intentionally misled the Parliament, he can be suspended from the House of Commons, and any suspension more than 10 days can also prompt a by-election in his constituency. The Privileges Committee to probe Partygate was formed in April of 2022. Then Prime Minister Johnson had told lawmakers at the time that COVID rules were being followed at number 10, when in reality they were being flouted. Johnson had later admitted that his statements were incorrect, but added that he believed them to be true at that point of time. The Partygate scandal became the biggest reason for Johnson's downfall, as he, with other senior government officials, which also includes current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, held gatherings in 10 Downing Street when the rest of the UK was forced to stay at home. Earlier, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had said any action on Johnson will be based on lawmakers' own beliefs. For more on this, our correspondent Alex Izat joins us live from London. Alex, Boris Johnson has come up with this massive 52-page dossier. He's trying to explain his stance. Do you feel he'll be able to clear his name for a possible next term in office? What are his future plans after this dossier comes out? Go ahead.
He seems very confident in himself. He's obviously left to go now to the Privilege Committee, where he will be speaking later today, and we understand he'll be questioned for hours. But the dossier that came out earlier today, the 110-page document, which Boris Johnson has already seen from the Privileges Committee, goes through a lot of evidence. So he has said, Boris Johnson said over and over again, that it was on advice and he didn't do anything recklessly or try to be intentionally misleading. But some of that advice does contradict already what he said. You mentioned Simon Case there, but there's also other correspondence between Martin Reynolds and his other former advisors who suggested that even though they said that rules definitely weren't broken, they couldn't be 100% sure whether guidance was or not. And they asked Boris Johnson not to say that to Parliament. However, Boris Johnson did then say it. So it's going to be that kind of conversation back and forth about whether or not Boris Johnson just ultimately made a bit of an error by saying guidance and rules weren't broken, when he really did know that rules weren't broken, but actually guidance was. And it is a lot of back and forth. Dominic Cummings, again, another former friend and advisor, he says in this evidence that we saw again earlier today that it was comical that Boris Johnson didn't think that it was a drinks party in the garden because there were drinks there. And Dominic Cummings said himself that he told Boris Johnson that it was a drinks party and that he shouldn't be going forward when there was still COVID pandemic going on. Ultimately, Boris Johnson did set the rules. He had many advisors about what people should be doing, not just in the government, but the whole of the UK. And he is the one that broke them. So whether we hear later today from the committee whether he's going to be still adamant that he is right and it was his advisors that are to be blamed, well, we shall wait and see.